Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
The unknown, and the paranormal.
I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny.
And we're live. Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny. My name is Chris Carr.
And I am Kristen Johnson. And I am feeling under the weather today. It's not COVID. It's just
Well, if it was, it's okay. It's going all right. It's going all right. It is flu season. So we do recommend you get your flu shot. I don't think there's implants in them. But, yeah. perhaps if we had done that, we'd be feeling better now. I hope you guys are doing great. We have a wonderful show for you guys tonight. We are bringing on a guest, Rabert Waggoner is his name. And he is quite good. We'll talk a little bit about him. And Lucid Dreaming. He is the author of the acclaimed book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. Now in its 10th print. He co-authored Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, with Caroline McCready. Both books are available on Audible, Kindle, CD, MP3. These books have been translated into French, German, Chinese, Korean, Czech, Finnish, and other languages. A past president of the International Association of Study of Dreams, or IASD, Waggoner serves as a co-editor of the online magazine, The Lucid Dreaming Experience. It's the only ongoing publication devoted specifically to lucid dreaming. Per Wikipedia, a lucid dream is a type of dream in which the dreamer becomes aware that they're dreaming. Wow, it's a trainable skill. During a lucid dream, the dreamer may gain some amount of control over the characters, narrative, or environment, although this control of dream content is not the salient feature. Lucid dreaming has been studied and reported for many years. Prominent figures from ancient to modern times have fascinated us. Dreams, including ourselves, and have sought ways to better understand their process and purpose. So, without a lot of fanfare, let's bring Rabert right on. Hello, Rabert. Good evening.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. This is pretty exciting for us because we like lucid dreaming and have had lots of them. And I know you and I talked a little bit through messages offline about some of the things. And I'll bring those up later. Ideas and things like sleep paralysis and this stuff and how that plays a role. But maybe for our audience, you could tell us how you get started with lucid dreaming and maybe some of your childhood experiences with it.
Yeah, so a lucid dream, of course, means any dream in which you realize within the dream that you're dreaming. You literally know, hey, this is a dream. And so my very first lucid dream occurred when I was probably 10 or 11 years old. I found myself at the public library looking at books. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this little baby Tyrannosaurus Rex walking along. And I think, wait a second, dinosaurs are extinct. How can this be? And suddenly it occurs to me that this has to be a dream. Because I'm seeing the dinosaur, I know they're extinct, this has to be a dream. And so as a little kid, I thought, well, if this is a dream, then I can wake up. And so I told myself to wake up, and suddenly there I was, awake in bed. So that was my very first spontaneous lucid dream. But it wasn't until I got into high school that I figured out a simple technique to become lucidly aware.
Excellent. Thank you. So much a Tyrannosaurus Rex, huh? And like we talked about, apparently, my audience, there's a little pop tonight. I'm not sure what's going on in the screen right. But bear with us. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Sorry about that. So a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and that brought on kind of a lifetime fascination with lucid dreaming.
You know, it's interesting. It was many years later when I was in high school. And that's when I discovered a new way to become lucidly aware. And I'll tell you what happened. I was reading a book by Carlos Castaneda, called Journey to Ixtlan. And
Right, we're having some fun.
Sammy. Upstairs.
There.
hi, can you hear me?
I can. We did lose you for a moment. And
Okay.
as to the gremlins in the machine, we haven't had technical trouble in months and months.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well,
I'm not sure what's happening, but we'll try to push on. I can hear you now.
well, to tell you what happened, so I was a junior in high school in 1975, and I was reading a book by Carlos Castaneda called Journey to Ixtlan. And Castaneda, of course, had a shamanic teacher who was going to teach him about psychoactive substances. But in this book, he's teaching him all sorts of things, not very much about psychoactive stuff. So in the book, he suggests that Carlos become aware in his dreams by finding his hand. And there wasn't really a technique, and so I basically invented a technique. Each night before I'd go to sleep, I'd look at my hands while telling myself, tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And I would just say that as I looked at my hands over and over for about 5 minutes and then go to sleep. And on the third night of doing this practice, I'm walking through my high school hallway, and suddenly my hands pop right in front of my face, and I'm just totally blown away. I go, oh my God, my hands, this is a dream. And it was really wild to realize that those football player guys, they're actually dream figures. And so I reached over to touch the wall to see what it would feel like, and it felt cool and nubby, just like a concrete block wall should feel. And I went on to have just an amazing lucid dream, and I was just blown away. So that was back in 1975, which was about 5 or 6 years before the scientific evidence for lucid dreaming came out.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I had some lucid dreaming experiences as well, and we both had very haunted childhoods that kind of ran along, although not so hypnagogic states and hypnagogic states, some of which were kind of scary. And I know there's a certain fear factor with any kind of lucid dreaming or astral projection where a person gets scared just realizing that they are not in their body or something like that, and they tend to snap back. Is that common in lucid dreaming?
Well, I would say that normally what happens is you begin to see that there's a difference between lucid dreaming and out of bodies. In my workshops, I normally tell people it's kind of like a house cat and a mountain lion. A lucid dream is like a house cat. An out of body is a little bit different. It's like a mountain lion. So, for example, here's one of the differences. In a lucid dream, you just realize within the dream that you're dreaming. You just realize, oh, there's a dinosaur there. This has to be a dream. But normally in an out of body, you might hear humming or buzzing as you're trying to fall asleep. And then all of a sudden you're viewing your bedroom from 6 feet above, your bed and wondering how you got this new viewpoint. And so again, you don't really realize within a dream you're dreaming. You just have all this humming and buzzing and strange energy and roll out or fly out or fall out of your body, and then find yourself moving around the whatever locale you find yourself in. So there's some similarities, but like a house cat and a mountain lion, but really the experience of them is quite distinct.
Indeed. And in your lucid dream, you don't often see your own body, right? You're more or less just kind of waking up in a dream. A lot of times when people are dreaming about flying and these sort of things, those are kind of like lucid dreams, and they tend to stick with you more solidly than the run-of-the-mill standard dream, right?
Yeah, normally when you become lucidly aware, there's a little bit of euphoria that comes along with that. You get this kind of uprush of energy and excitement when you realize, hey, this is a dream, because it's in some regards like you solved a riddle. You now understand that, oh, I thought this was real a moment ago, but now I see this is a dream that I'm in. So a lot of times you get that uprush of energy, and that helps to make it memorable. But a lot of lucid dreamers have learned if you get too excited, then you'll wake up. And so in lucid dreaming, you have to learn to kind of modulate your emotions. Otherwise, you'll pop out of the lucid dream and return to the waking state. So there's a lot to learn as you get on the lucid dreaming path in order to successfully navigate it.
Now, at this stage of the game, are you able to lucid dream on command? You taught yourself to do this, like where it's pretty much a nightly thing, or is it so many times a week through the training, kind of really training the brain, right, to recognize the fact that you are lucid dreaming?
Yeah, lucid dreaming seems to take a fair amount of training for most people. Um, Scientists say you're a frequent lucid dreamer if you have one lucid dream a month. And so, each night we probably have 5 or 6 dreams. And so every month we'll have 180 or so lucid dreams. So to be a frequent lucid dreamer, all you have to do is have one. Anyway, so when I first started out by this technique of looking at my hands, I'd probably have like 1 to 3 lucid dreams a month. And then I adopted some additional techniques and began to have like 3 to 5 lucid dreams a month. Then years later, I adopted some other techniques and would get up to 10 lucid dreams a month. It took me a while to come up with a technique, and I write about it in my second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, that allowed me to get up to 30 lucid dreams a month. But even then, some nights I'd have 2 or 3 lucid dreams, and on other nights I wouldn't have any lucid dreams. So there's different techniques a person can use to become lucidly aware, and all. But one thing I want to get across to the audience is just having a lucid dream doesn't mean it's going to be a brilliant lucid dream. There's the qualitative aspect of lucid dreaming, and that's what I try to encourage people to do in my book, is have high quality lucid dreams. Instead of just tons of lucid dreams, I want them to have really deep, profound, incredible lucid dreams, and not just use every lucid dream as a chance just to fly around and have fun and impress the dream figures. There's much more to lucid dreaming than all that.
But that fun can be pretty fun. I certainly had dreams where I was flying, recognized that I was having a dream, and was in control of it, and it was crazy. And doing that as a teenager with the hormones and things, that meant to get nasty. But my gosh, the things you could produce in your dreams just by willing them.
Yeah, that's right. The play factor is a lot of fun, and especially back in 1975 when I taught myself how to lucid dream, there really weren't any books on it. There wasn't any information out there really much about it, except what I was reading in the Castaneda books. And so that fun factor, I would say most of my lucid dreams in those first 5 years was just about having fun. But in the process of having fun, I began to learn the principles of the lucid dream state. I began to see how things work, because it's not random. It's not, just happening in the moment. There's actual principles that you begin to learn, and then you begin to learn how to manipulate the lucid dream better and achieve the things that you want to do. And so there's a lot of growth and journeying in lucid dreaming as you get into it.
What would be an example of that, a higher purpose for lucid dreaming?
Right. So oftentimes when people ask me why bother to lucid dream or get involved in this, first, when you become lucidly aware, you have new access to creativity. You're aware within the lucid dream, and now you can access creativity in a new way. And so a lot of people have used it for writing novels, for getting musical lyrics, for solving engineering problems, for solving software and coding problems. Because when you're aware at this deep level of the unconscious mind, you can now access creativity at a new level. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing would be using lucid dreaming for emotional healing and physical healing. Already there's scientific studies of using lucid dreaming to resolve recurring nightmares from post-traumatic stress disorder. because that's one of the big issues. People have nightmare night after night after night, and then they start abusing substances. They drink so much so they can fall asleep, or they smoke so much that they fall asleep, or whatever. But normally, what happens if you teach one of those people who are having recurring nightmares how to become lucid just once, then suddenly their recurring nightmares cease. And it's an incredible benefit to those people, because then they don't have to drink themselves to sleep or take substances to do that. But besides that, anecdotally, so that's been scientifically validated. Anecdotally, you'll see lucid dreamers who've used it to get rid of anxiety, to get rid of panic attacks, to overcome phobias, to overcome drug addictions, to overcome obsessive compulsive kind of disorders. It's really incredible. There's a whole new potential future just in emotional healing alone. In my book, both my books, I have chapters on people who have used lucid dreaming for physical healing, because again, you're aware at a very deep depth of consciousness. And just like someone in deep hypnosis can, stop their blood from, stop pain, stop their bleeding from a wound or whatever. When you're deeply aware at this deep level in a lucid dream, oftentimes you can influence your physical body and do some pretty profound things. So that's another aspect of it. Then you can also use lucid dreaming to engage your larger awareness or your unconscious mind. You can literally stop in a lucid dream and make a request or ask a question of your unconscious mind. And it's interesting that I discovered this in 1985, but it was in 1993, I was reading a book by Carlos Castaneda, The Art of Dreaming, and he asked his shamanic teacher, who's this voice that responds when I ask a question in a lucid dream? And his shamanic teacher said, oh, that's the dreaming emissary. That's what I call him. He'll always tell you the truth anytime you ask a question. And so it really blew my mind that Castaneda had also realized that you can reach out to your unconscious mind and receive a response to questions within a lucid dream. And finally, you can do spiritual practices in a lucid dream. And like in Buddhism, they have Buddhist dream yoga. And Naropa said that Buddhist dream yoga was one of the 6 paths to enlightenment. And so there's a whole way of using lucid dreaming connected with spiritual philosophy to have some truly extraordinary experiences. So you can do all these kinds of things, and that's why I think people get really deep into lucid dreaming. But if you don't know any better, you use it just to play around and have fun. And that's what I did for the first 5 years, and that's okay. But it did help me learn the principles of lucid dreaming, so that later on, as I was going deeper, I could really figure out how to go deeper.
That's really interesting. I don't think we've ever thought about it in a way to cure PTSD or perhaps be more creative. That's interesting. It's just using, say, the creativity aspect, right? With some instruments in the background, creative people. How would recognizing that we're dreaming and having control of that improve our creativity? Would we be asking the emissary, like, what should come next in this song, or what should we write in this book? How would that?
Well, yeah. So I recall I was doing a episode with a radio show, and so they reached out and said, okay, if you've had a lucid dream where you've been able to access creativity, call us. And so these people were calling in. Like, one guy was a professional rock musician. He said that when he'd become lucidly aware, he would tell himself when he walked into that building over there, he was going to hear the most incredible lyrics that he could ever imagine. He'd walk into the building, open the door, and he said, all of a sudden, here's this profound song that's just occurring, and he's listening to it, trying to memorize it so that when he wakes up, he can write down those lyrics. Another guy called in. He said that he was a professional novelist. And so what he would do when he became lucid, he would shout out for his novel characters to join him. And then when he said, all of a sudden 5 or 6 novel characters would appear in the novel he was writing, and he'd ask them, "What's wrong with this novel? How do we make this novel better?" And he said the thing that was crazy is that the novel characters would always give him suggestions like, "Oh, you shouldn't kill Grandma in chapter 3. We need her at the end of the book to reveal the secret." And so he said he was just totally blown away at that idea. And other people called in, people who have resolved important issues, resolved engineering problems in their dreams, and all. So there's a lot of fascinating things. But when you look at the history of dreaming, you already see a lot of creativity. Like a Nobel Prize winner won the Nobel Prize based upon a dream, and this was Otto Louis, who was trying to figure out how nerve impulses occurred, and no one could figure out how the nerve impulse occurred. And in a dream, he realized it was a chemical transmission. He saw a symbol that made him realize it was a chemical transmission, and he said when he woke up from that dream, he understood how nerve impulses happen. There is Larry Page, the co-founder of Google. At the 2013 University of Michigan commencement, he mentioned that he was a PhD student there long ago. And one night he had this dream. And when he woke up, he started writing down all the thoughts that were coming to him. And he said he showed it in the morning to his major professor. And his major professor said, "Wow, that's really a pretty good idea, but why don't you finish your PhD first before you do that?" He said it was from that night came the idea of Google and how to do a Google search. And so, again, that resulted in a multi-billion-dollar company. So creativity already exists in regular dreaming. The beautiful thing is that in a lucid dream, you're consciously aware and you can seek it out.
As Linda pointed out, the dreaming emissary sounds like your intuition, and it does sound like part of yourself. In a way, it sounds like AI, right? It's like artificial intelligence. Like the AI, like, what do I do with this? But it's really yourself that's coming through, maybe your true self.
Right. I would say that that's a side benefit of lucid dreaming. You begin to realize that within yourself is this, what I would call larger awareness or inner awareness that has a knowing that's beyond the ego or conscious self. And so sometimes during the day and not in a dream, you can actually connect with that larger awareness and get information. For example, just to give you a story, about 15 years ago, I was meditating in the middle of the afternoon. And I got down really deep and I could feel my larger awareness, just like it was a lucid dream, but I knew I was awake sitting in my chair in the middle of the living room. And so I reached out to my larger awareness and I said, what do you have to say to me? And I heard very clearly, "We want you to send $10,000 to your friend Paul back in your hometown." And I thought, what? And I popped out of that meditation experience. Again, I was awake. I was awake when that occurred. The next day, I'm meditating again in the middle of the afternoon. I get down deep, and now I can feel the energy of my larger awareness, plus the energy of my friend Paul's deceased mother. And I ask an open-ended question, "Hey, what do you have to say to me?" And it said, once again, "We want you to send $10,000 to your friend Paul back in your hometown." And when I came out of that meditation, I went to my wife. I said, "Look, this happened twice on successive days. If this was a dream, I would always do it, try to figure it out and do it. But this occurred in a meditative state. And so I think we really got to do something." And so my wife and I agreed that we had sent my friend Paul a letter along with a check for $1,000 and say, "Hey, Paul, we're your good friends. If something's going on, please let us know. We're here to help." And I sent that letter, and 4 days later, the phone rang. It was my friend Paul, and he was so emotional. At first, I couldn't understand him. He told me that the week before, he'd gone to his mom's gravesite and yelled at it that if somebody didn't help him, he was going to kill himself. And I asked him, what's going on? And he said that his father, his 80-some-year-old father, had fallen in the bathroom and broken his hip about 2 months earlier. And now he was in a nursing home where they said they were going to teach him how to walk again, but it was obvious he'd never walk again because they weren't doing anything. So he wanted $10,000 to build a handicapped accessible bathroom in his house, and he was going to have his father come live with him. And so we sent him the money. He built it. His dad came and lived with him for 6.5 years. It was truly incredible. So again, your listener has a good point. In lucid dreams, you can interact with this inner awareness directly. You can hear it respond. Sometimes you'll hear it respond. Sometimes it'll change the entire lucid dream in response to your query or your request. But also in the waking state, I think people who begin to interact with it realize that this inner awareness really exists and that they can begin to access it in the waking state as well.
That's wonderful. Thanks for joining. This is Nick for the night.
Sorry, I'm gonna try this out. Any better?
I'm sorry, Chris?
We're trying to change out the mic.
Okay, that's all right.
We apologize.
Oh, that's fine.
A lot of folks are saying I sound muffled for whatever reason in the stream. We can hear ourselves clearly through our headsets, and I think you can hear us pretty well. But we'll press on, try to switch back to a different mic. I think it's nothing at all. So I don't know what the gremlins are. I don't know if they're trying to keep us letting out some really good information. I don't know, guys.
It's just your audio.
Robert, you can hear me, and so you can hear my questions, and people are here to hear you. So we appreciate you joining us for this.
Yeah.
As mentioned, it could be this sort of AI consciousness thing. The people that you meet in these dreams, are they dream people, or are they real? Can you meet your friends? Bob Burnett would ask.
So that's an excellent question. And one of the beautiful things that lucid dreaming allows is for us to explore and experiment in a lucid dream. Not only can you do personal experiments, you can also do scientific experiments in lucid dreams. But this issue of, is every figure just a dream figure, a projection of your mind, or is there something more going on? And so here's an example of where that gets complicated. One time, my father had passed away, and it was about 3 years later. I see a gold ladder, and coming down the ladder is my father. And I think, wait a second, he passed away 3 years ago. Oh, this is the dream. So I immediately became lucidly aware. And then I started to laugh because he had such a bad haircut. And I thought, wow, Dad cannot even get a good haircut in the after-death state. And so then I began to think, well, wait a second, is this my dad as a spiritual being in an after-death state? Or is this just a projection of my mind, just a memory, just an idea that I'm meeting in the lucid dream? So to figure that out, I decided I'd ask him questions. So he comes down the ladder, I greet him, we greet each other, and I immediately ask him, hey, Dad, you're from the land of the dead. When do you think Mom's going to pass away? And he looked at me and he goes, oh, probably in 2 to 6 years. I said, of what? He said, a heart condition. And then I asked him one more question, and he answered it. And then he told me to please be quiet because he had come to tell me things. And so for the next 10 minutes, he tells me things about the family. So in the morning, I wake up and I think, okay, well, I'm going to have to wait 2 years to see. And it was 23 months later, almost 2 years exactly later, my mom went to the hospital and almost died of a heart condition. And then about 3 years after that, she went to the hospital again due to a heart condition because of a drug that the doctors were giving her that was actually harming her heart. And she almost passed away. But she made it through that 2 to 6 year period. But again, this is a way that you can explore and begin to delineate whether you're interacting with a dream figure or whether you're interacting with an awareness outside of your own awareness. And so there's lots of stories of lucid dreamers getting unknown information from deceased dream figures. And that's probably the number one area where you begin to realize that there's something more to dream figures than just projections of your own mind.
Yeah, very interesting. And before you mentioned that, our friend Bob Burnell had mentioned that he had met his father in a lucid dream, who was deceased, and he had died some years earlier. He mentioned that he was walking down the road and there's gray rocks, color in the sky. But he goes on to say, we talked, we hugged, he acknowledged that he had passed. I kept bouncing back and forth between a bunch of girls patting my head in an outdoor shower. And then lastly, he says, I knew it was him. So he feels like he did, in fact, meet his dad. So it can be a gateway to that, which is very interesting for our paranormal audience who are always trying to prove an afterlife. And I think that's a lot of the reasons people get involved in this, is because they're very interested in people that may have passed in their lifetime and meeting them.
Right. So one thing that I always encourage people to do is what often happens in a lucid dream is the person gets so excited to meet their deceased loved one that they just hug them and cry and hug them and cry and all that. I really encourage them to ask, why are you here? Or what do you have to tell me? Because they're showing up for a reason. And if you spend the entire time just hugging and crying, you're not really kind of getting to that. And oftentimes when people ask, when someone asks, lucidly aware asks, why are you here? Suddenly they'll hear something like, I've come to tell you that I left something important for you with some friends of ours, and you have to contact these people. And when people get that information in the lucid dream, wake up with it, and then call those people long lost family friends who say, oh my God, we've been looking for you for 5 years now. Your parents left these important items for you. Then that's when you get confirmation that it was something more than just a deceased dream figure. You really get confirmation that this was valid information passed on to you in the lucid dream state.
That's great. And Bob mentioned that he had felt distance prior, and that helped kind of seal the gap. So
yeah, and
finished business.
right, and sometimes that's the most important thing. I had a workshop of Chinese lucid dreamers because my books have been translated into Chinese, and I remember one of the women. She became lucidly aware when she found her father driving her in a pickup truck, and she realized, wait a second, my dad's been dead for 10 years now. And so they have this very long conversation. And at the end of it, she asked her father, do you love me? And her father replies that, of course, he loves her, that he's always loved her and all. And she said that during his waking life, he had never said those words to her. But to hear it in the lucid dream just meant the world to her and really solved a lot of the grief and all. So sometimes when I think of people who are going to grief counselors and all, sometimes I wonder if they shouldn't learn how to be lucid dreamers and seek out the deceased loved ones in the dream state and get the resolution that they've been hoping to achieve.
It sounds like they're actually reaching those spirits. And on the spirit thing, there are archetypes, things like OPAG and OPAG syndrome that people talk about, and I have an experience with, that are kind of like, maybe not so great, not such a wonderful thing to come across. What are your feelings on that, on OPAG syndrome?
Right.
Archetypes, are they real spirits?
Yeah, so that's interesting because there are dream figures that sometimes can be very aggressive or very angry. But here's the interesting thing. In a lucid dream, if I meet an aggressive or angry dream figure, I'll send it love and compassion, or I'll send it what it lacks. If it's full of hate, I'll send it love. If it's whatever it is, I'll send it what it lacks. And oftentimes, what you see in the lucid dream is that as you send that angry dog love, all of a sudden it shrinks down and becomes a little wiener dog like you had when you were a kid, and you can pick it up and go fine. And so, what you begin to see is that when your mind, when your reaction changes to that object, the object changes. So then that suggests it's a projection of your own mind. And we also do this in when we interact with, or what this is what I encourage people when you interact with a shadow figure. Sometimes in a lucid dream, you'll be chased by something. It'll be a nightmare, and then you think, wait a second, I had this nightmare 2 weeks ago. Oh, this is a dream. So what I encourage people to do is turn around and look at whatever is behind you, because Carl Jung would say that's the shadow, the denied, ignored, repressed parts of the self that's trying to get your attention. And in a lucid dream, you can turn, you can see it, and then you can ask it a question. Who are you? What do you represent? I got an email from a young guy about 6 months ago. He told me that he'd been having this recurring nightmare, and then he finally became lucidly aware, and he turned around and he asked this guy, who are you? Why are you chasing me? And he said, the guy chasing said, I represent your fear of boredom. And suddenly the lucid dreamer thought, oh my God, I am afraid of boredom. And he realized that in the waking world, he had to change that fear if he was going to resolve this nightmare series. So you begin to learn that if you ask an open-ended question, what the issue is. But you're right. There are on occasion some strange figures, and like through time, there's been the idea of the old hag, and sometimes that occurs in sleep paralysis experiences and things like that. So it is a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, that was a strange one. And I always wondered, because I had no knowledge about old hags at the time. This was a long time ago, but I had that book. And it had a lot of the same, um, typical kind of symptoms, right? Like I saw her, and she was this prone figure, she was in a swamp, and she was like terrified in my dream. And I seemed very aware that I was lucid dreaming. And then I just felt like I was in a black and I couldn't breathe, and I felt like I was suffocating, trying to get back to my body. And I wondered if, like later, I guess now, was I supposed to learn something from that? Was she simply just a figure? Was there just something? It wasn't a great place in life at the time. If there was some lesson maybe attached, and if I could have communicated more, maybe I could have gotten more out of it.
Yeah, so you're right. So, sometimes it's hard to figure out, but that's why I always encourage people to ask an open-ended question like, "Who are you?" or "What do you represent?" or "What do you want?" Because oftentimes when you hear the response, then you realize, oh, there's now I get it, because you've gotten some feedback from them about what it is that they represent. But you're right. Sometimes in lucid dreams, you'll have some figures that are resistant to your changes of mind. So even if you send them this kind of energy or that kind of energy, they won't change. But it's rare when that happens, but it can happen on occasion.
So it's not the norm. And that's good to hear. I think that relationships with spirits and people in the afterlife is kind of like people in our present lives. Most people are pretty cool, for lack of a term. At least they're not out to get you in some way. But, if you go through enough of them, there's always somebody out there who's kind of a jerk, right? And they want to mess with your life in some way. And that may be true with this as well.
Yep. Yeah. So again, that's why I always like to ask an open-ended question: Who are you, or what do you want? And by giving them a chance to express themselves, sometimes you'll have some insight. I remember one time I was reading a book by Charlie Morley, and he shared the story of this young lucid dreamer, Antonio. And so Antonio became lucidly aware. He was at a party, And so he was having all sorts of fun, walking around, talking to the dream figures, knowing it was a lucid dream and all that. But he realized about halfway through that there had been this woman who was following him the entire time. And finally, he turned and asked the woman, "Who are you? What do you want?" And she replied, "I represent your brain, and do us all a favor and stop smoking. It bothers us." And so Antonio was really blown away to meet a representation of his brain who was asking him to stop smoking. And so he thought about it in the lucid dream, and he had a reply to her. He said, "Okay, how about this? Every time I've tried to quit smoking, I always have cravings. So if you can make me think of something else when I have cravings, then I'll be able to stop smoking." And the brain responded, the representation of the brain responded, "We'll see what we can do." And the guy reports that when he woke up, he had no interest in smoking. He could hang out with smokers and had no interest in smoking. It was like the idea of smoking just died after that lucid dream. So this is kind of a beautiful way of working with parts of your inner awareness to overcome habits that you might want to let go of or whatever. And that's how he did it. Whenever I think of smoking, you make me think of something else instead. And so I thought that was a brilliant example. But again, it's an interesting playground when you begin to become aware within your dream state.
That is so interesting. Sometimes into things like magic or sorcery or self-help work, or I guess, what umbrella do you think that this fits in? Psychology that we're talking about, is it a form of psychology and training the self? Or are we getting beyond that into some other realm that we just don't quite understand?
I think one thing that people forget about dreaming is this. Every night, we spend about 2 hours in the dream state. When you go throughout an entire night, it'll be about 2 hours of dreaming. So that means by the time you're 24 years old, you've spent 2 entire years in the dream state. By the time you're 48, you've spent 4 entire years in the dream state. By the time you're 72, you've spent 6 entire years in the dream state. And so why is dreaming so important? Why is dreaming also so little regarded, so little understood? And if you spent 4 years in Japan, you would understand the culture, the customs, the food. You'd probably speak the language pretty good and all of that. But by the time you spent 4 years in the dream state, do you understand any of your dream symbols? Do you understand anything about the dream state? And the chance is you're down at the kindergarten level. You just have very little understanding. So again, this dream state, I think, really is an opening to exploring the nature of reality, the nature of the self. When you're lucidly aware, you can play around with time and space. You can do all sorts of explorations, and it's available in dreaming, but you've got to have the capacity to become consciously aware to really harvest it, to really gain the beauty of it, I feel.
It seems like it would take some kind of training, because it's hard to even remember one's dreams. Do you recommend that people keep a dream journal, write things down?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I keep a dream journal, and the wonderful thing about it'll really work for you when you begin to make the process of thinking, what was I just dreaming, every time you wake up. So you can't look at your cell phone when you wake up and see if someone's texting you. The first thing has to be, what was I just dreaming? And then oftentimes you can begin to remember it. What I do, I'll grab my notepad, and in the upper right-hand corner, I'll make a few notes about that first dream. And just by seeing those few notes, like cat, sailboat, hit a rock, then I'll remember, oh yeah, I was on a sailboat with a family of cats and yada yada. So that's how I go about it. But the other thing that's interesting about it is sometimes I'll be in the dream state and I'll see something and I'll think, wait a second, I saw that in last week's dreaming. Oh, this is a dream. And so by remembering those dream figures, then oftentimes when you see them again, that's when it occurs to you, oh yeah, I've been here, done that, and so therefore I must be in the dream state. But having a good dream recall is an important feature of lucid dreaming.
So definitely conditioning is a big part of this. Um, you mentioned the hands technique, remembering the hands, but what would you recommend, without giving away too many secrets? Obviously, you have a couple of books out that really get into this, that people can try, tonight if they want, when they're done with the show.
Well, the nice thing about the hands technique is it's kind of like Ivan Pavlov and that conditioned response. So the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov, he'd ring a bell every time he fed a dog, ring a bell every time he fed the dogs. Then he would ring a bell and the dogs would naturally salivate. So he had conditioned the response. So by looking at your hands, saying the next time I see my hands, I'll realize I'm dreaming, or tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. You might be in the dream state, opening a door, see your hand. Oh, this is a dream. Your hands might pop in front of you. Oh, this is a dream. But it's a conditioned response. It's basically a well-known psychological technique to have a stimulus and the associated reply or response. So that's a simple one. But the other simple one I'd give to your audience is just the power of suggestion. So before you go to sleep, clear your mind and then tell yourself, tonight in my dreams, I'll be much more aware. And if I notice anything odd, I'll immediately realize I'm dreaming. So tonight in my dreams, I'll be much more aware. And if I notice anything odd, I'll realize I'm dreaming. So when you're in the dream and there's a knock at the door and you open it up and it's Tom Cruise delivering a pizza, you just won't sit there thinking, boy, how much should I tip Tom Cruise? Instead, you go, Tom Cruise at my door, this is too bloody weird. Delivering pizza? What? You'll become lucidly aware and run with it. But what happens in most of our dreams, we just go along with whatever happens. We'll make up a story of Tom Cruise hasn't had a good film lately, and so now he's delivering pizza to make ends meet. It's crazy, how we'll explain it away. But if you suggest to yourself that you're going to be much more observant, then you have a chance, at least you'll be much more observant. And when you see that odd thing, you'll go, wait a second, that's too odd. This has to be a dream.
That's great. Yeah. And I understand this conditioning concept. I know when I was in middle school, way back when I had a cassette player, so I did myself. And I had a cassette that was a guided meditation on astral projection. And it seemed like the more I did it, the better it worked because I was more aware that I was doing it. I think all of this is like something like you can't just do it once and expect great results, or every 6 months like you tell yourself, well, I'm going to lucid dream. It might take a little bit of work on a person's part, right? To kind of get your brain to remember these things that you might be dreaming.
Well, I've had cases where people have heard me give a talk, and that night they have their very first lucid dream, and so sometimes I think just hearing about it and getting energized and excited and curious about it, oftentimes will result in a lucid dream. But you're right. For most of us, we gotta get on the path. We gotta keep practicing the practice, and then we begin to make some progress.
That is excellent. Um, let's talk a little bit about sleep paralysis. And again, to my audience, we're sorry about the muffled audio. We're not sure what's going on, but we'll let Robert do the talking. With sleep paralysis, how is that different? And I think you and I talked about a certain medication that I started taking called Rabert, right? And the FDA symptoms of what side effects that may happen with this drug, one of them was sleep paralysis. And sure enough, it happened. And had some kind of unpleasant experiences with like shadow-like figures and that sort of thing. Obviously, nothing bad happened, and here we are. But it was kind of enlightening. I'm like, wow, well, that is interesting. Do you know anything about single pharmacological aspect to all of it?
Yeah. So, so sleep paralysis, for people who have had the experience, oftentimes what happens, you feel like you've awakened in bed, but you can't move your body. You feel paralyzed. And so sometimes you might feel like something's on your chest or something, making it hard to breathe. Or, or if you let your mind begin to wander and become fearful, then who knows what'll happen. You might see aliens, you might see a burglar coming through the door. God only knows what you'll see if you let your fear run away with you. But that's what's called sleep paralysis. Your body feels paralyzed, but you feel like you're awake, that you're awake and aware. So sleep paralysis is something that happens to about 10 to 30% of the population. But you're right that it does seem to happen more often when people start to take certain types of medications. And so some of these medications are ones that are dealing with they're anti-anxiety medications, and certain classes of medications seem to result in sleep paralysis experiences the most. Now, the interesting thing about sleep paralysis, if you can marshal all your energy and get your thumb to move, then suddenly the sleep paralysis spell is broken and you're totally awake. But if you can't get that to happen, sometimes the sleep paralysis can seem to go on for minutes. Now, a friend of mine, Ryan Hurd, said that he had so much sleep paralysis that he learned how to move from sleep paralysis into a lucid dream. And so this is what he'd do when he found himself in sleep paralysis and he felt aware, but his body was paralyzed. He would think, okay, I'm in sleep paralysis. Now I'm going to imagine that I'm flying over the nearby city park. And he'd try to imagine that, oh, actually, I'm flying over a nearby city park, flying over the park, flying over the park. And he said after 20 or 30 seconds of imagining that he's flying over the park, suddenly he'd find himself in a lucid dream flying over the park. And so he said that's how he learned how to move from a sleep paralysis experience into a lucid dream. But otherwise, if you want to get out of the sleep paralysis, you need to move your little finger or move your toe, or sometimes people relax. They just relax themselves so deeply they move out of the experience.
Almost in like a trance-like state. And I
Yep.
think it might even be worse out here. I'm going to try one more thing.
We apologize for this.
No problem.
Any better there?
It's a little better.
A little better? A little cleaner? I think
Yeah.
the board that we're using might be on its way out, unfortunately. I'm not sure if it's the mic or the board, and we tried a couple different combinations of things, but I don't want to dwell on that. So we talked about the entities. They may or may not be real, we find, right? That in this dream, lucid dreaming, things of our own creation, things in the back of our mind in the recesses may come forth, but you may also talk to something that may be a relative, a real being, and have a takeaway that is legitimate to you that you can work with after you're awake. Have you ever intentionally lucid dreamed and met people that were also lucid dreaming?
Right. In my first book, Lucid Dreaming: Gateway to the Inner Self, I have a chapter on mutual lucid dreaming, and that's where you become lucidly aware and try to find another lucid dreamer, and all. So it was interesting. I did some experiments with a good friend of mine, Ed Kellogg, a wonderful lucid dreamer, and then Linda Magillon, who wrote the book Mutual Dreaming. And so we did some experiments trying to become lucidly aware on the same night. We would pass on a secret word so that they would have to know the secret word when they woke up from their lucid dream. And we'd also had a secret gesture to make. And it was interesting. One time, Ed, he found himself lucidly aware in what he thought was my living room. And in the morning, when he described it, he did a good job of describing the living room. And also, he noted that I was doing something really strange, which was basically my secret word that I was passing on to him. But I wasn't lucid. But he did that night become lucid. He became lucidly aware. He saw me perform something that was the secret word, and so he seemed to suggest that he had entered my dream state. But he and Linda had some wonderful results of describing very similar dream environments, and so it seems like mutual lucid dream is possible. If I was a lucid dreamer, I wouldn't make that my number one goal because it takes a lot of work. But it does seem like on occasion it does happen.
That's really interesting. So he was able to get the word, but you were performing whatever was.
Right.
Whatever that action was.
Right.
You could see it. So he saw you doing it, but you weren't like just saying the word.
Yeah, exactly.
That's almost like a psychic, recollection.
Well, here's another example, because oftentimes what happens is one person is lucidly aware and the other person is dreaming. So one night I became lucidly aware. I was in a restaurant and I could even see the individual salt crystals in the salt shaker. And I thought, look at this lucid dream. This is so incredible, that I can even see the individual salt crystals in that salt shaker. And through the door comes my friend Maureen. Everyone calls her Mo. And so I ran up to her and I said, Mo, this is a lucid dream. Do you realize that? And she has rapid eye movement. I'm looking at Mo and her eyes are darting around like she's having rapid eye movement, which happens when a person is in regular dreaming. And so I think, how can I make Mo lucid? So I grab her around the waist and I make her and we float up to the ceiling. And I said, Mo, do you see this? We're floating. This is a lucid dream. And still her eyes are darting around like regular dreaming. And so then I get so frustrated. I put my fingers into a peace sign and I just shove it in her face. And I say, Mo, do you see this peace sign? You can use it as a symbol to help you become lucidly aware anytime you want. And I woke up. In the morning, I thought Mo, who lived out in California, would write me or call me or email me or something, but she didn't. So I just kept that lucid dream to myself. 6 months later, I was out in San Francisco, and I realized I had some free time on my business trip for lunch. And I called up Mo and asked her if she wanted to get together for lunch. And she said, sure, meet me in Burlingame at this restaurant on Main Street. I go to that restaurant, and so now again, now I'm in the waking state. 6 months later, here comes Mo walking down the sidewalk, and right as she walks up to me, she puts her fingers into a peace sign and she shoves it into my face.
No way.
Come on. Wow.
And I said, Mo, why are you doing that? And she said, I don't know why. I just really felt like it.
Wow.
So again, this thing that occurred in the lucid dream 6 months earlier, suddenly she's doing in the middle of the afternoon in Burlingame, California. So you're right. It does seem that sometimes the subconscious is actually influenced by these encounters in the lucid dream state.
Do you think the emissary that you mentioned earlier actually is your subconscious, or is it something else, or do we just not know?
Well, the dreaming emissary, I think I would call it your larger awareness or your inner self is I think what I would call it.
That's interesting. Have you experimented with things like binaural beats or hemisync?
Right. So right there's things like hemisync that the Monroe folks came out with, and and there's some scientific evidence that when you listen to Hemosync, it'll put your brain in kind of a special state. But what I would say, what you want to do if you're going to use Hemosync is once you get deep into Hemosync, that's when you have to use it like insert suggestions, like tonight in my dreams, I'll be much more aware. And when I notice something strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. So when you get your head in a different state in Hemosync or binaural beats, that's the time I would say that you should really insert suggestions about what a great lucid dreamer you are, how lucid dreaming is easy, how you can have a lucid dream tonight. It's just easy to notice when things are strange. You'll immediately recognize, oh, this has to be a dream. So some people use Hemosync and have some good results with it. Other people just have pleasant experiences.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we find binaural beats pretty interesting, fun. We even started creating them. So, yeah, that might be something we could do is put suggestions in it to help ourselves get into the lucid dream. Bob mentioned a psychic spine in all of that and through lucid dreaming, and that does bring up things like remote viewing. And do you see a correlation between, say, remote viewing and lucid dreaming?
Right. It's interesting. I'm friends with Dale Graff, who used to head up the Department of Defense's Stargate program, and which was all about remote viewing and all. And so he and I have definitely had some interesting conversations. But I remember once I was at an International Association for the Study of Dreams conference. I think it was at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And Stephen LaBerge was giving one of the special presentations. And so he gave his presentation, and at the end of it, he said, do you want me to talk about something really strange, or do you want me to talk about another study I did? And so the audience yelled out, tell us something really strange. And so he said that he was part of an organization of a research study where they use lucid dreaming to try to dream about certain coordinates and what would be there. And so he showed a drawing from one of his lucid dreams about what he saw in the lucid dream when he told himself to go to this special coordinate. And then he showed the image of what actually existed there. And I think it was some Soviet, special base or something like that. And his drawing and the photograph, the spy photograph, were extremely similar. And so he said that even though this has never been published, that the Department of Defense asked for this kind of research to see if lucid dreaming would be better than remote viewing. And so what I have come to understand is that they decided that lucid dreaming and remote viewing had the same results level. But remote viewing is so much easier because you can do it during the day, and the people just go into the room and go use their mind to search out the information. And so just from a logistics standpoint, remote viewing was better in that regard.
I see. Yeah, probably easier to test in like tempo. It'd be a little quicker.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't have to wait for the person to sleep. But I imagine trance states or something too. We mentioned binaural beats and going into trance. Have you had any lucid dreaming experiences where you were actually awake, not technically asleep?
Well, you definitely have those moments like the meditation experience I shared where I received information outside of my own knowing. And then later my friend confirmed that, yes, indeed, he needed that exact amount of money to build a handicapped place for his dad. I've had just tons of experiences like that where information has come to me. In my first book, I share how my wife and I had been in the Grand Canyon on a 7-day float trip. You go down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. And so sleeping out on the sand beaches at night and not having your cell phones work and all that kind of stuff, you just kind of return to a natural state. And my dreams were extraordinarily vivid. And also I was having lucid dreams like every other night. And so we get to that Havasu Creek Canyon, and so we park the boat, and the whole the crew tells us to go up the trail about a half mile and down into the creek. So there I am in Havasu Creek, about a half mile in, and the water is smooth and silky, and outside it's 100 degrees, but oh my God, this water is smooth and smoky. And so all of a sudden I got into a meditative state, and I asked the canyon, "What do you have to say to me?" And I heard clear as day, "Get out while you still can." And I sat up, in the stream, and I thought, boy, am I hurting a aquatic plant? Am I doing something wrong? And then I thought, oh, that was just weird. So I got back into a meditative state a few minutes later, and I reached out to the canyon. I say, "Canyon, what do you have to say to me?" And this time it was more insistent. It said, "Get out while you still can." And so I stood up in the stream, and I told my wife and the other people there, I said, well, "We've got to get out of here." And they said, "Why? This is heaven. This is great. This is perfect." And I said, there's something wrong. We got to get out of here. And then, because the Havasu Canyon is pretty narrow, all of a sudden, up at the very top, I saw a little bit of a thunderstorm, a black thunderstorm. And I could see, oh, there's going to be a flash flood. And as soon as I pointed that out to everyone, then they said, "Oh, God, we got to get out of here." Then the crew comes running up the trail. "Get back to the boat. There's going to be a flash flood. Get back to the boat. There's going to be a flash flood." But in this Havasu Creek, every year, people drown because of flash floods. Because there in Arizona, there's just no soil to hold the water. And it comes ripping down these valleys. And suddenly, the quiet stream will become 10 feet of raging water, and people just die. So again, this issue of becoming lucidly aware, I do think one thing it taught me that we exist within an interconnected oneness, that in a sense, everything is connected and also conscious and alive. And so that's why, the idea of reaching out to a canyon, 50 years ago, I wouldn't have done that as a little kid. I would have kept my consciousness to myself. But now the idea of reaching out to a space that doesn't seem that strange, because I know we exist within an interconnected oneness.
That's like an animist viewpoint.
Yes.
And we consider ourselves animists. So I think that's wonderful. We do think that spirit of some sort of consciousness can reside in places, in like a river or a canyon. Yeah.
Well, again, I believe in an interconnected oneness, and so within the oneness, because the oneness created it, then everything by virtue of its being exists by virtue of the oneness and is connected to the oneness. And so I've had experiences where I've tried to go beyond lucid dreaming, and that's when I began to have these experiences of the interconnected oneness and realize that, oh, it's anyway, it's one of those interesting areas.
Yeah. I mean, we can pick that apart, but it is interesting. At the end of the day, we're all kind of connected. And things can respond, like a canyon can actually tell you something. And that sets off things in my head, right? When we talk about consciousness, which is a huge field to study it now.
But I can even remember as a child, I was probably 11, 12. One night in a dream, a meadowlark landed on my chest, and it taught me its song. And I woke up singing its song. I had the English translation of the meadowlark song. And I wish I would have written it down because it was a repeating song, but still in its simplistic way, it was really a beautiful one. So that's another interesting area, is this idea of interacting with animals in lucid dreams. My wife and I had 2 Abyssinian cats. And I remember the first time the cat came and talked to me in the dream state and told me what it wanted. That blew my mind. It changed my view of that cat. And so in the waking state, I would talk to the cat like it was a human and basically explain things to it. And it was incredible. We just had an amazing relationship. So that's another thing you'll hear from lucid dreamers who are experienced lucid dreamers, that they interact with their pets in lucid dreams and learn things.
That's amazing.
It really is. That's
Yeah.
fascinating, and it's an angle of things that I've never thought about. Talking to your pets. Why not?
I was
The-
very-
There was a woman. I dreamt about her the morning before I opened the first email from her. I think her name is Angela Brunk, and she wrote a book called Dreaming of Polar Bear. And so she began to become lucidly aware. She lives in Alaska. She began to dream of a bear who would come to her. She'd become lucidly aware, and the bear asked her to join the Bear Council. And basically, in the Bear Council, she learned the bear view of the world, and it was really a fascinating book. But I think it's Dreaming of Bear or Dreaming of Polar Bear. Really a fascinating book. But that's another aspect of lucid dreaming, especially when you get back into the natural world. You begin to see things from a different perspective.
Now, when the animals communicated, when you talked to your cat, did the cat speak to you in words? Was he just like the Cheshire cat with the big grin
Oh.
saying, "Hey, Robert, I kind of wish you'd give us more of that fish-flavored food," or
Yeah.
was he showing you things through like a symbiology or a scene of what the cat?
Yeah.
Why?
Now, but it talked to me in a little cat voice. Here's what it was. My wife and I had got this little Abyssinian cat, and I worked out of my home in my home office. And so the little cat would come into my home office while I was on the phone with important clients, and it would come right up to the phone and go, "Wow." Or it would walk across my computer when I was writing an important letter. And so what happened after about a month, I just would always throw the cat out of the office and shut the door until noon. And I'd open up the door and go have lunch, and there the cat would be. And all. So this went on for a few months. And one night the cat appears in my dream, and then a little cat voice says, "Would you play with me?" And I thought, a talking cat. Oh my God. And so I got up the next day and I went to the cat and I said, "Look, you came into my dream last night and talked to me, and you want to play? Okay, every day we'll play. There's this game called tag. I touch you, and then you have to chase me and touch me. Then I chase you and you touch me." And I go, "Okay, tag, you're it." And I went running down. This cat chased me all over the house, and then with its little paw tagged me, and then it turned around and ran the other way, and we played tag. And after that, I realized this cat is really a sharp cat. One time, so about 2 years later, this was a cat who would never let you pick it up. It always scratch you. And so one night in a lucid dream, it came and told me how it wants to be held. And so it showed me exactly how it wants to be held. And I couldn't believe this was occurring in a lucid dream. It was so funny. I wake up and now I see the cat in the hallway just as I had dreamt about, just a minute earlier. I put my arm in the way that it wanted to be held. It jumped up into my arm. Basically, it stood. I had my arm went anyway like this, and it had its haunches here and whatever. I walked down to the breakfast table, and my wife goes, "Oh my God, how'd you get it to do that?" And I said, "It came in a dream and told me how it wants to be held." And so again, you just can't even make this stuff up. But
Oh, that's
It-
Interesting.
interesting.
it's really fascinating especially when you start to hear from other lucid dreamers who've heard from their dogs or cats or horses or whatever.
That's an aspect of lucid dreaming I've never thought about. Talking to animals, talking to your pets. It's not the first thing you think would come up, but what valuable information is that? You mentioned things like PTSD and being able to heal that. And there's just vast uses for lucid dreaming that aren't typically discussed. At least
Right.
circles with it.
It's a totally wide open platform, for each person's unique experience. It's a wide open platform. Again, people don't understand it. And that's why I wrote my first book. I was so tired of just seeing the same lucid dreaming stuff over and over when I knew there was such a vast potential. And that's why I wrote my books, just so people would begin to understand the vast potential and also how to achieve the vast potential, because it's truly profound. I mentioned at the top that I do this online magazine, Lucid Dreaming Experience. Uh, so this is the September issue, but in the June issue, I interview this guy named Jose who had a traumatic brain injury, and he didn't have any money, didn't have any insurance. He said his brain was just incredible pain, night and day. Nothing was making it better. And the doctors also told him that he was going to die within a year. And for whatever reason, he decided lucid dreaming would be the pathway to save him. He got my books, got some other books, began to read them. He said when he read my book and realized the various approaches to healing in the lucid dream, he gave it a try. And he said he had this, you can read the interview in the magazine, but he had this powerful lucid dream. He said it was like his brain pushed reset, and now the pain was gone. He was getting his abilities back, and here it is 6 years later, he's still alive, has a full-time job, working for a large corporation and all that kind of stuff. It's truly profound, but again, people don't explore it. Dreams are just nothing. When you start talking to people about dreams, they roll their eyes. It's just a hard sell, I guess.
We understand, talk about it a lot as well.
I'm going to bring up your magazine now. And the website, if you're just listening to this, is luciddreamingmagazine.com. Right? I got that right, Robert? And I see there's a download PDF right there right on the front page. And you can download this magazine for free to get started reading about it and sharing experiences. I believe, I know you were asking people to share their lucid dreams with you recently. I think I came across on Facebook to share those dreams and publish them. So that's interesting. I also want to show them your other website.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, the Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine, my friend Lucy Gillis and I have been publishing it for 22 years now. And so we have 10 years of free issues that anybody can read. And the reason we do it is to inspire people. Because when you read about other people's experiences, like people, they become lucidly aware, and they're also Reiki practitioners. Well, in their lucid dream, they use Reiki, and is like, wow, I would have never thought about that. And so that's why we have an open-ended magazine like that.
That's wonderful.
I love that. And here is your other website, lucidadvice.com. And there's lots of great information on here as well.
Yeah.
We troll through a little bit and get to see your books and some very interesting articles in there as well. Yeah. We're very fascinated with this. Your books are available on Amazon, and we're going to buy them. We want them. And I love this. You've actually opened up our minds to just different purposes, uses for lucid dreaming. This seems really conducive to our field, being in the paranormal.
Absolutely.
You could lucid dream a location before going there, maybe a proposed haunted house. Maybe be able to draw some kind of like remote viewing type insights, or maybe more detail than what you might get in a simple remote view.
That, or we could talk to the spirits of the house.
Exactly.
That as well.
They may talk to us, and I would certainly like to talk to our cats a little better.
Oh, that's right. I was giggling, yeah.
Needs a talking to, I
think.
Yeah. It was funny. I was giving a talk in Silicon Valley, and the talk ended. It's probably 11 o'clock at night, and now there's like 30 people in line that wanted to talk with me. And my inner self told me the final person in line is the important person. And so I get through all the people, and here's this final woman, and she was, I believe she was a Russian immigrant, and she told me, I haven't been able to dream in 2 years. Can you help me? And I said, okay, what happened to you 2 years ago? She said, my husband suddenly died, but that's not the problem. I can't dream. And I said, well, sometimes, when we have something like that occur, we'll just stop. And she goes, nope, that's not it. And I go, look, lady, you give me your email. Tonight, I'm going to go and dream about why you can't dream. And then in the morning, I'll tell you what's going on and all. I said, it's almost midnight now. I got to get some sleep. So anyway, she gives me her email. And that night I go home, or I go to my hotel and tell myself that tonight I'll dream about what this woman's situation is. So my first dream is about all the countries she had visited before she came to the U.S. and how she struggled. I mean, this was really a tough woman to make it to the U.S. and after going to 3 other countries and stuff. It was really a powerful dream. Then the next dream was, if you can imagine this, in my right hand, I have a leash and I'm holding a jaguar. And in my left hand, I have a leash that's, I think, being pulled by a whale. I can't even see the front of that animal. And the entire dream, I'm being pulled around by this woman's 2 power animals. And I was so bloody exhausted by the end of it. In the morning, I wrote to her and I said, you're not remembering your dreams because you're being called on a shamanic journey. You are very powerful and you're denying your dreams because of that power. You're afraid to accept it. You've got to accept this power. And she wrote me back and she said, oh, you don't know this, but I met this jaguar shaman who said I was a jaguar woman and all, but I didn't know if I could believe him. And then the night after that, she wrote me, oh, my dreams returned. But sometimes, people, they're out of touch with their spiritual self. They disregard their dreams. They disregard their intuitions and all. And I was glad I could help the woman and get her back on the dreaming path. And I assume she's a jaguar shaman now. But anyway, it was wild to be dragged around by her animals. And she does owe me a night of dreaming because that was a long night, I'll tell you that.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. The books are available on Amazon.com, of course. You can get them. Lucid Dreaming, A Gateway to the Inner Self, and Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, Tips and Techniques for Insight, Creativity, and Personal Growth. We've enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get books ourselves. We recommend that people in our audience check this out. Check out your website, luciddreamingmagazine.com. Absolutely free right there. Lots of great information to be had and practice lucid dreaming.
Great. Well, I've enjoyed this. Thank you both so much. And after you read the books, if you want to have me come back on and talk about one of the specific areas, always happy to do that. So,
we'd love that.
Yes, please.
We'd love that. It really opened up, I think, our minds to like different ways we could use this, doing the stuff that we do now.
Our audience as well.
May bring about to some great information and probably be a lot of fun doing it as well. So thank you.
Thank you again. We appreciate you.
Okay.
Everybody out there who joined us, thank you so much, and thank you for dealing with our audio issues and technical difficulties. We've been on a pretty good streak for a while. I think it's been about 6 months since our audio went to hell and came back. So that's good in live show terms. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next week. See you then. Thank you.